Okay, we're live.
Hello.
So, have you been enjoying the rainy day?
I have not because I've had to be out in it a couple of times.
Yeah,
But it is nice to see some rain.
yeah, that's true. Especially with
But
everyone having wildfires.
yeah, I know. How about you?
Yeah, trying to stay out of the rain. I'm looking forward to getting out and seeing some of the fall colors.
Me
The tree.
too.
Yeah.
Me too. I'm not a fan of the changing weather, but I like the fall colors and things like that.
Well, looks like we have a couple of viewers now. One is probably Tim, who's going to be monitoring um, the comments and responding to everybody, and he's letting me know that they can all hear us, so that's good.
Okay. Okay.
So we could, I think we could go ahead and get started here. So I'm Rachel Ruhlen. I'm with the Roanoke Valley-Alleghany Regional Commission, and we staff the Roanoke Valley Transportation Planning Organization, which covers the urbanized Roanoke Valley. So it includes the city of Roanoke, Salem, Botetourt County, Roanoke County, and the town of Benton primarily. This tonight is the first in a series of chats about transportation equity. And really, tonight is when we're going to hear the most about transportation equity with Jordan Bell, who's a historian and has been doing a lot of research in urban renewal in Roanoke. Over the next weeks, we're going to hear from locality staff with the City of Roanoke, Roanoke County and Benton, Botetourt and Salem, and the Virginia Department of Transportation and Valley Metro. And they'll be talking about the opportunities for public input related to transportation that they have either now or ongoing or at various times, how to keep an eye out for that. We're doing this series of chats because we are about to launch our long range transportation plan survey. So we, every 5 years, would develop a 20-year long range transportation plan. So that means every 5 years, 5 years drops off and 5 years gets added on, but it's always 20 years out. And we're going to be launching a survey on Monday. So we thought this would be a good opportunity to talk about transportation equity and why it is so important to be involved and to take advantage of all those opportunities for public input. And so Jordan is going to give us some background about some transportation inequities that have happened in the Roanoke Valley.
Mhm.
So I'm going to let Jordan introduce himself now, and then we'll chat a little bit about his research.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Rachel, for having me. I'm looking forward to tonight's conversation on transportation and everything Roanoke. Again, my name is Jordan Bell. Grew up here in Roanoke, Virginia, graduated William Fleming High School in 2009. I work at Garden City Elementary School, Boys and Girls Club, Apple Ridge Farm, a little bit of everything dealing with kids and having fun with children. Um, my research and my passion has been the Gainesboro community and the research and understanding and telling the story of what happened in Gainesboro, Roanoke, which is the historical African American district in the city of Roanoke. So I've spoken with a lot of people, uh, have done a lot of tours of that area, and have done a lot of these kind of conversations about what can be done now versus what was done then on different issues dealing with the city of Roanoke. So I'm happy to be here this evening to have this conversation. Um, Community activist, historian, father, brother, a little bit of everything. So look forward to the conversation tonight.
Great, thank you. And we're so happy to have you. Well, tell us, just give us a little bit of background about what is urban renewal and when did that happen in Roanoke?
So Urban Renewal is a nationwide or was a nationwide program that was started late 1940s, early 1950s, and it was signed into, I wouldn't say signed into law, but it was started in the 1950s. And the purpose of the urban renewal programs was to kind of build a build the cities that you see now. So that's where you see your interstates, your civic centers, your coliseums, different things like that that a lot of people frequent every single day, every single year. Interstates, civic centers, coliseums, different things like that. And urban renewal hit Roanoke also in the 1950s. So the idea behind urban renewal was supposed to be you take homes, but you rebuild those homes. And the homes that you take, if you don't rebuild them, you give just compensation for the home to the homeowner. And urban renewal hit Roanoke in 1955, and Roanoke had three urban renewal projects. Those projects did not end until about the 1990s, and hit everything from Kimball Avenue and Roanoke all the way to Fifth Street, which is predominantly northeast and northwest Roanoke, and predominantly, the Gainesboro area of Roanoke.
Uh, since we're talking about transportation, I know there was a lot of different kinds of projects. Um, what what were the transportation projects involved in urban renewal?
So part of the transportation projects were, of course, the interstate. Before the interstate, where the interstate is now, that was homes, but it was also a graveyard. And so you used to be able to get from Kimball Avenue, where the gas company is in Roanoke, and you could literally just ride or walk up the street, and you wouldn't have to go to the end of Williamson Road or the end of Orange Avenue and turn at the light. You literally could just walk up the street and hit northeast and northwest Roanoke by walking through neighborhoods. And so the transportation aspect of it was, of course, the biggest transportation aspect of it is the interstate. But what also happened was is they widened streets, and they made 2-lane streets into 4-lane streets. And they took homes and they blocked off access of you walking straight through a neighborhood. Instead, now you have to go to a stoplight, you have to turn a few corners, and then you can get to the neighborhood that you were trying to get to, 60 years ago by just walking down the street. So part of the transportation thing that they created was, of course, the interstate, but they made it a little bit more difficult for you to walk through neighborhoods to get to another part of the community.
So not only were houses destroyed and families displaced, but also neighborhoods were cut into pieces that had formerly been
Neighborhoods
together.
neighborhoods were literally they were cut into pieces. On one side of the interstate, you have, just for example, Gilmer Avenue, and then on the other side of the interstate, you also have Gilmer Avenue. Back before urban renewal, it was just one street. You didn't have to hop over any you know creeks or interstates, anything like that. You could just literally walk down the street and stay on Gilmer Avenue. So that's just one example of the transportation aspect of it.
And some of the roads that were widened, it was what, Orange Avenue, Williamson, um, Gainsborough Road.
Williamson, Gainsborough Road, Wells Avenue, um, I believe those are the only streets that were widened. But Gainsborough Road was one of the main ones that they widened in Wells Avenue.
Mhm. We should maybe clarify by the interstate, we're talking about Interstate 581, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
and that was built in the 1960s, and that
Mhm.
cuts directly through what used to be a thriving neighborhood.
Um, would it be like, so it was the Gainsborough neighborhood and the old Northeast? Would that be similar to the relationship between, say, the old Southwest and Wasena? Is that a kind of a similar relationship?
Um, probably so. Probably so. what separates Northeast and Northwest is North Jefferson Street. So the street that St. Andrew's Catholic Church is on, that street separates Northeast and Northwest. So everything from St. Andrew's Catholic Church back towards the interstate is Northeast Roanoke. And then everything from St. Andrew's Catholic Church back towards the other way towards 5th Street is Northwest Roanoke. So it's similar in a way. But all of that area was impacted by urban renewal and transportation.
So we were chatting earlier about some of the resources and where you've learned some of this history. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So majority of the stories and history that I know, I've been blessed and honored to know a lot of the people who grew up during that time, who lived during that time, who worked during that time. And I've been able to talk with them, and they've been able to tell me their stories. It's one story that really sticks out to me. Mrs. Gloria Mans, she talks about being able to roller skate from Northeast to Northwest when they started the Urban Renewal projects. But she was a little girl, so she had no idea what was going on. So she was having fun with her friends, roller skating over dirt hills and different things like that. But she had no idea what was going on during that time. She grew up in the Northeast area. So just different stories like that. But a lot of the scholarship research that I've been able to come across, a lot of the newspaper articles, of course, Mary Bishop's article, Street by Street, Block by Block, Roanoke Times, 1995. That article was really what sparked, even 25 years ago, that article really sparked the discussion to get back into what happened during that time. And then City Lab article by Martha Park, that's here recently. She talks about urban renewal as well, but she also talks about the graveyard, that was where the interstate is. Dr. Reginald Sharif, he has done a lot of scholarship work on it. So those three people, Mary Bishop, Martha Park, City Lab, and then Dr. Reginald Sharif. And of course, the Gainsborough Library, to me, is just the greatest resource in the city of Roanoke, period. The people that work there are just wonderful. And they have been able to help me a lot in the research that I've been able to learn.
So you've uncovered a lot of history, and do you have any formal training as a historian?
I do not. I have no formal training as a historian. I literally got into this just wanting to know stories of my elders and of my family because they grew up in the Gainsborough area. And one thing led to another. And I become, this Gainsborough historian. But no, I have no formal training as a historian.
So you became one of the experts in urban renewal.
Yeah.
Doing it. That's very inspiring.
Just doing it. Yeah.
Great. So I wanted to ask a little more about the graveyard. Of course, anyone who's driven along Orange Avenue may have noticed this tiny little cemetery. I actually walked by it. There's a hotel there, like the
Yes.
Econo Lodge, maybe.
I believe it's the Econo Lodge. Yes.
Right, and it's just nestled in between the Econo Lodge and the interstate ramp.
Yeah.
I walked past it, and it's completely fenced in and locked up. It doesn't look to me that there's any way somebody could go visit their loved ones in that cemetery. That there's no access to it, as far as I can tell.
So First Baptist Gainsborough owns that piece of land now, and I believe it's called Old Lick Cemetery. It's either Old Lick or Big Lick Cemetery. I can't remember right now, but I believe it's called Old Lick Cemetery, and that was a predominantly African American cemetery. All the way up until the 1960s. When they started to raise the bodies from that cemetery and start to build the interstate. But that's another transportation aspect of it. Those tombstones go all the way back to the interstate. Even where the graveyard is now, those tombstones go all the way back to where the interstate starts. And no, unless you hop the fence, don't ask me how I know that. But unless you hop the fence to get over there, you cannot go visit your loved ones unless somebody who owns the piece of land comes and open it for you. But that graveyard, predominantly African American. About 1,200 bodies were taken up out of the ground, put on the back of a truck, and taken about 25, 30 minutes down the road to East Botetourt Cemetery, a few minutes from Corner Springs Detention Center, so that they could make access for the interstate. And again, this happened across the country. You can actually Google the removal of cemeteries, and tons of articles will come up of similar situations that happened here in Roanoke. And it was actually a somewhat of a government plan to take up cemeteries to build things like an interstate or a civic center or just businesses in general. But this happened across the country, and it also happened right here in Roanoke.
Wow. So the 1,200 remains that were removed was part of that Old Lick Cemetery,
Yes.
but a little bit was left. So a few uh,
Yeah.
graves were left in place.
Yeah. It might be a safe bet, maybe about 20, 25 tombstones left over in Old Lick Cemetery still.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. I'm not sure I have a lot else to ask. So, is there anything else you want to share about transportation or transportation equity?
Just trying to figure out how to um and this is a concern in the Gainesboro area as well, how to have a lot of traffic in the Gainesboro area but still treat it as a neighborhood.
Yeah.
We still enjoy the traffic, because with traffic comes people, with people comes business, with people comes, people moving into the neighborhood, moving into the community, coming over here to walk, ride their bikes, drive their cars, do different things, but still treating Gainesboro as a community, as a neighborhood. So I live on Gilmer Avenue, and trying to find a way to slow people down um, is a huge want right now that I'm trying to work on, because Gilmer Avenue is a very important street that connects a lot of areas in Roanoke, but it's also in a neighborhood. So we're trying to figure out how to make sure, that people aren't doing 45, 50-mile hours through a neighborhood, which is a transportation issue, because Gilmer Avenue connects a lot of areas in Roanoke, even though it's right in a neighborhood. So still trying to figure out how to, recruit people to their neighborhood, riding their bikes, walking their dogs, walking with their family, because that's a part of transportation. But also still treating Gainesboro, I'm thinking of Gainesboro as a neighborhood.
Right. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jordan. I really appreciate it. I love hearing this story. It's a very interesting story, and I've read a lot of the materials that you've talked about, and I've heard you give your presentation and some of the
Yes.
slides you showed. It's such an interesting story, and enjoy walking around that area.
Thank you for thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming. All right. Well, you have a good evening, and we'll end our broadcast now.
You too.